News! Okay, we'll start with this. You know, I was just surveying the featherweight division, the women's featherweight division, and how deep it is, and how it's fast becoming the deepest division in all of women's boxing. There are just so many talented fighters there, many of them unbeaten, climbing up those ranks. And so I posted this image to my X account, to which a Twitter user that goes by the name Boxeo Pats asked, of the fighters featured in the image, who would give Skye Nicolson the toughest fight? Well, I do think that Skye Nicolson can beat at least some of these fighters, some of them. I think she can beat Tiara Brown. I think she can beat Sarah Liegman. I think she might be able to beat Sophia Leash. She might. She's not cannon fodder for everybody in the division. No, she's a quality operator in her own right, though some of these fights really don't favor her outboxing style, her outside fighting, her economic work rate. So up until this point, the most credible threats to Skye Nicholson's reign as WBC champion have been Karis Ardingstall and Raven Chapman. You know, the Karis beat her in the amateurs, and in the pros, Raven's got more of a pro style than Skye does. Skye still looks like she's points fighting at times. Still looks like she's trying to transition from an amateur points style to a pro style. So in that regard, I felt like Karis's aggression, come forward fighting, and her combinations could give Skye a lot of problems, as well as Raven Chapman's high work rate and the fast pace that she sets for a fight. Up until this point, those two looked like they were the most credible threats to Skye Nicolson. And then I found out about Elizabeth Oshoba. She takes the cake. She may be the biggest threat to Skye Nicholson's reign as WBC champion, because so much of what Skye Nicholson does relies on her long levers, her long and limber extremities, able to comfortably box from the outside and pot shot. But what does she do against someone who's taller than she is, longer than she is, and perhaps stronger, a harder puncher? Somebody who doesn't need to be mid-range to inside to touch her with punches, because they've got long levers of their own and height of their own. Enough ring coverage that maybe boxing from the outside isn't as easy for Skye. What would she do against Elizabeth Oshoba? Not an easy fight. So to the eye, Skye Nicolson does have hand speed. She does look a little quicker to the draw than Elizabeth Oshoba, though not by much, and not by so much that she may not get touched up. The problem, Elizabeth Oshoba has enough height and length that she could touch Skye from the outside coming in, because she's got big reach too, but not just big reach, she's got a big punch. She's a stronger, more aggressive fighter than Skye Nicolson. And she's fluid on the inside too. Elizabeth Oshoba is not limited to boxing long range. She can box from the outside and bang on the inside, whereas Skye, as of yet, as much as we've seen her, she hasn't shown much in terms of inside game. Fighting in the pocket. She doesn't do that. No, she stays on her toes, on her bike, the whole night, the whole fight, which could be difficult to do against a fighter who's taller and longer. It's not as easy to stay on the outside of their punches when they've got longer arms than you do. It ain't easy. Said it's not gonna be. That after she wins that belt, that's going to paint a target on Skye Nicholson's back that all the other game in town are going to be aiming for. Elizabeth Oshoba included, who was on Sky Sports yesterday, and not only did she call out Karis Ardingstall by name, she called out Skye Nicolson by name. If he is the head that wears the crown. Don't say that for nothing. Skye's best bet against a taller, longer fighter than she is being slightly faster, but moreover, timing her punches. Her timing could save her. Being fast enough to beat the other girl to the punch and timing the punches to catch her when she don't expect them, as to fluster her and render her hesitant as the fight progresses, though that is easier said than done, and idealizes the situation quite a bit. Level changes too. She's got to move ahead, fight on a swivel, change levels as much as she can, don't give the other girl a clear target. Can't sit in one spot. Pivot to turn the other girl, hit her in a blind spot. But it ain't easy. Because Skye's not big on power, and if you can't get the other girl's respect, it's going to be that much harder to keep her out. So if the question is, who gives Skye Nicolson the toughest fight? I'd say it's Elizabeth Oshoba, then Raven Chapman, then maybe Karis Ardingstall. Karis needs to pick it up. She's got some catching up to do in the pros. She may have beaten Skye Nicolson in the amateurs, but this ain't the amateurs. This is the pros, and Karis has considerable catching up to do. Skye's already a champion, whereas Karis, she's not even in contention for an alphabet title. Yeah. But of all the fighters featured here in this image, I'd say Elizabeth Oshoba, Raven Chapman, and Karis Ardingstall. Those are the biggest threats to Skye Nicolson. They give her the toughest fight. In men's bantamweight news, reigning WBC bantamweight champion of Japan, Junto Nakatani, is reportedly now finalizing a co-promotional deal with Bob Arum's Toprank alongside his existing promoter, Akihiko Honda's Taken, that will see him fight in the USA again in the future. This news comes to us on the heels of yet another major signing in former WBO champion Jaime Munguia, who is also inked a co-promotional pact with Top Rank. He's going to be fighting on ESPN now, and that news comes to us on the heels of Shakur Stevenson achieving free agency and deciding not to renew with Top Rank. And what did I tell you? If that kid decides to leave, Top Rank ain't gonna lose a wink of sleep over it because they've got a lot coming down the pipeline.
They don't have it all riding on one fighter.
Shakur Stevenson, least of all, who got booed for 36 minutes last year with De Los Santos, then put people to sleep again with Artem Haratunian this one.
Back to Junto.
So it's a bit of a curious signing. Junto Nakatani to fight in America a little bit more often in the future. It's a curious signing because he doesn't actually need Top Rank. For where he campaigns right now, 118 pounds, literally all the champions at that weight are in Japan. And Junto's mission for the near future, according to Dake Jonovan, he wants to unify titles at 118, then eventually move up to 122 to fight Naoya Inoue, saying, the fight with Inoue is the one I really want. A lot of people are really expecting this fight. I will continue to get stronger and will be ready for that fight.
So when you think about the division that Junto campaigns, who the champions are and where they're from, and what he wants for his future, all of that is really centered around a Japanese audience involving Japanese fighters, Japanese champions, and the end game
would be one of the biggest, if not the biggest fight Japan has ever seen. Junto Nakatani, so long as he can keep winning and keep staying in character, him versus Inoue at 122 pounds is a monster. It's a monster of a fight, but you know what it isn't?
Or what it doesn't require. None of that requires Junto to fight in front of an American audience. So what's the point?
Now, what Top Rank might be thinking is that they can set up shop for Junto on the West Coast in LA because there's a very popular Japanese baseball player that plays for the Dodgers.
Shohei Ohtani.
Maybe try to siphon off some of those fans, feed off of that synergy to help promote Junto on the West Coast. And that might actually work out, it might. But it's not really conducive towards Junto's bottom line. If Junto's bottom line is getting Naoya Inoue in the ring, you can do all of that without coming to America. Being honest with you, it's not a requisite that you fight here and fight in front of this audience to get at that fighter. Not really.
My honest opinion is that this is more of an opportunity for Top Rank than it is for Junto.
So it is a good signing. It's a very good signing nonetheless, because Junto is a fan-friendly fighter with a fan-friendly style in all the ways that Shakur Stevenson is not. For what they were paying Shakur Stevenson fight by fight, somewhere in the neighborhood of a $3 million minimum, you get more bang for your buck with the Junto Nakatani than you do with the Shakur Stevenson, and those are just the cold, hard facts. You have to entertain the audience to get them to come back and keep coming back. And Shakur, unfortunately, he didn't do that in his last two fights.
You know, the fighters sometimes don't want to understand that. They're of the mindset that a win is a win when it isn't.
It's entertainment. And you have to want to entertain people because those are the people you want to spend money on your fights, money on your pay-per-views. Eventually, the guys that Top Rank is signing, Junto Nakatani, Jaime Munguia, it kind of gives you the impression they're leaning towards action fighters, fan-friendly fighters, and away from the cerebral types.
The cerebral guys, because even if the cerebral guy can win a fight, did he entertain the audience in doing it? Would people pay to see that guy again?
$3 million you fritter away on Shakur Stevenson, you can use that to sign some other fighters that will actually entertain an audience.
So this was a very good signing.
In men's super middleweight news, more details are now coming out as to why the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Canelo Alvarez fight did not materialize per Ben Shalom, who explained the situation.
And I want to preface everything with this, that I didn't want Chris to get that opportunity. I didn't actually want him to get that fight. He doesn't deserve it.
Boxer chief Ben Shalom has officially confirmed that Canelo Alvarez versus Chris Eubank Jr. isn't happening next. Eubank Jr. was initially the frontrunner to box Canelo this summer.
What happened?
Chris wants too much money, which is what I told you guys in my previous video before we got here and this information was disclosed. The issue is most of Chris Eubank Jr.'s marquee value is centered around the United Kingdom. Outside of the United Kingdom in the United States, he's not as big a draw. So if the plan was to fight Canelo in, say, Las Vegas,
For example,
Chris might want a number that does not reflect his marquee value outside of the United Kingdom, in America. It was reported on Tuesday that the Mexican superstar is now in the process of finalizing a deal to face Edgar Berlanga instead on September 14th at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. Speaking to TalkSport.com on Wednesday, Eubank Jr.'s new promoter, Ben Shalom, explained why negotiations have collapsed for a fight between his client and Canelo. Canelo's promotional team couldn't get to a number that Chris felt was acceptable for a fight that size, he said. And I do believe that fight is going to happen, but it's not going to happen in September. There were talks about maybe doing it in the United Kingdom, but with the stadium event with Riyadh season on September 21st, Joshua versus Dubois, which we are involved in, it doesn't make sense either. Obviously, things can always change, but at the moment, I think Chris feels that it's a huge fight. Yeah, tell me something I don't know.
you can't do it at Wembley in September if it was all supposed to go down in September because there's another big show happening there. Two shows that size back to back would cannibalize each other.
You don't want the paying public to have to choose between your show and the Joshua versus Dubois show. People ain't made of money.
So what you can do is you do it somewhere else, say the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The problem there is, in Las Vegas, in America, Chris ain't no big draw.
Ben Shalom continued, "It is a huge fight, so the terms need to be right." Eubank Jr. signed a partnership deal with Boxer earlier this month after parting ways with his longtime promoter, Wasserman Boxing, Kale and Nisei Sarland. Now he's with Boxer, now he's on Sky.
Yeah, technically he was already there. It's just he's with Boxer now instead of Wasserman.
After putting the pen to the paper on the contract, Eubank Jr. reeled off a 4-fight hit list, including Canelo, Terence Crawford, Conor Benn, and a rematch with Billy Joe Saunders, who's morbidly obese now.
We ain't seen that guy since Canelo Alvarez smashed his face. Smashed his eye, to be exact.
Shalom went on to confirm that none of those 4 fights will happen next before touching upon Eubank Jr.'s next steps and disclosing what conversations have been had with the world champion. Yeah, none of those fights will happen next, he added. I think he's at a point where he wants to fight for world titles, and I think that's what you'll be seeing.
Fight for world titles where? At 160 pounds? At 160 pounds, there are 3 reigning champions. There is Carlos Adames, holding the WBC, Erislandy Lara, holding the WBA, and Yanibek Alimkhanalai, holding both the WBO and IBF titles. Of the 3, who does Chris have his eye on?
Since he wants to fight for alphabet titles, but he's not fighting Canelo Alvarez, who has all of them at 168, the next best thing would be to fight for one at 160.
Right.
He's been out of the ring for a year because a lot of reasons, so we want to get him back in the ring again and amongst those big fights. Jesus. Has it already been a year since his rematch with Liam Smith?
It's been that long.
And we'll be announcing that in the next couple of weeks or so. The possibilities are open at the moment, and there are definitely conversations going on with a world champion. Pressed on a potential date for Eubank Jr.'s return, Shalom added, I think the end of September, early October, he'll be making his first fight under the Boxer banner.
World champion do you think they're talking to?
Perhaps Yanibek Alimkhanalai, perhaps him. It just so happens that Sky Sports is the UK broadcast partner for all the top-ranked shows. They broadcast all the top-ranked cards, so it's possible that via that network relationship, Yanibek is the guy they're talking to, but that's just me bouncing ideas around.
I think it's Yanibek, but maybe he's talking about somebody else.
So here's the skinny. Chris Eubank Jr. signs to a promotional outfit that doesn't really have any big names for him on their side of the street. And as soon as he does, he starts talking about all these other guys that are on all these other sides of the street, doing all these other things. Conor Benn, who's with Matchroom.
Canelo Alvarez.
Who's busy.
Terence Crawford.
Who's busy.
Billy Joe Saunders.
Who's retired. He's quasi-retired. Billy is morbidly obese right now. I'm not kidding when I say that. The guy's huge. And this is your 4-man hit list after signing to a promotional outfit that doesn't have any big names for you to fight. You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say you went over there because there are no big names over there to fight. I'd say you went over there seeking refuge.
What?
Well, it struck me as curious. that Chris Eubank Jr. signed the boxer because the first thing I asked myself is, what fights are they going to make for you over there? Who's over there? You know, Conor Benny's with Matchroom. If you achieved free agency and you were still interested in boxing Conor Ben, one would have thought that you worked with Matchroom.
You want the boxer.
There was a decent-sized fight waiting for Chris Eubank Jr. at Queensberry, a fight with Hamza Shiraz, who's making a splash, making a name for himself, and gaining momentum, but he didn't go to Queensberry.
You want the boxer.
And then you know what I started thinking to myself? Maybe he went to boxer because nobody's over there. There's nobody over there. And maybe that's why he went. At this point, Chris wants to fight in safe fights.
Well, Ben is saying they were in talks to fight Canelo. That's not a safe fight.
Yeah, and it didn't happen. It's not going down.
Chris wanted more money.
I get the sense he goes over there because there's nobody over there, no near and immediate threat to him. And if you signed a boxer, you know they're on the hook. They have to make fights for you.
Even if it's against domestic level guys.
It's not the first time Chris Eubank Jr. walked away from a big fight. Remember, he quite famously walked away from a Gennady Golovkin fight. And I don't even want to put it on his father. I don't. Because if Chris wanted that fight, he would have had that fight. He's a grown man.
He was at the time.
At the time, Chris Eubank Sr. took all the heat for the fight not happening. Chris's father. But when you think about it, Chris was a grown man at the time. If he wanted the fight, he would have had the fight, and there would have been very little that his father could have done about it. He took the bullet for it. He took the heat for it, the way that any father would for his son. But underneath it all, the real reason it ain't happened. Chris didn't want it.
Same reason this Canelo fight didn't happen.
Now, you can say that for the size and scale of the fight, you're expecting a lot more than what they offered. But remember, you ain't in America who you are in the UK. So you're going to go back to the UK, fight in a smaller fight, a much smaller fight, for less money.
And that's why you signed the boxer. So they can make those smaller fights for you.
Safe money. Comfortable money. Risk-free.
That's why he signed the boxer.
So I don't want to sound like I'm complaining or bellyaching that a fight between Canelo and Chris isn't happening. I already told you, that's a shitty fight.
I'm glad it's not happening.
Though if it's not happening, it's because once again, Chris Eubank Jr.'s ego got the best of him.
That happened with the Conor Ben fight a few months ago when they tried to revive it.
He wanted a truckload of money then, like he wants a truckload of money now. So what's the situation when neither a Conor Ben fight or a Canelo fight materialize as a result of your financial demands? What does that mean? That you're demanding too much.
You're the problem. You want too much money.
You've already lost a year since the Liam Smith rematch.
So, I mean, we'll see what's next.